Good afternoon, everybody. All right. We hadn't had a chance to meet yet, but my name is Jeff Quiane. Some of you may have spoken with me in relation to ramp ISAs that could be calling for you. Some of you don't know who I am. But amongst other things, I do manage the ISAs that are in our office that call for our brokerage firm, and then also the ISAs that call for our ramp partners who have elected to have an ISA call for them out of our office. So I manage that. Before real estate, just a little bit of background, I spent a long time in the financial services industry. I have been selling stuff forever. Originally, it was all over the phone, calling people for generally $100,000 to $200,000 investments over the phone. So when it comes to an ISA calling over the phone, that's easy breezy stuff compared to a lot of other products that I've sold in the past. So we can do a good job of kind of getting those ISAs trained up. And we're going to share some of the expert knowledge, hence the title of this section, kind of on what we need from a fundamental sales perspective. Has really no exclusive connection to the ISA, right? Just everybody as an agent or an ISA or whatever role you're looking to fill in your organization. The expert knowledge part of this program gives you that fundamental sales aspect that sometimes we know we just need to be refreshed on. One thing that I will say is all this stuff about the platform, right, the goal setting that Kitchens went through with you, all that stuff is great, but if we don't execute on doing and using all the stuff that's talked about, right, we end up 6 months from now going, this was a waste of money. So I would really advise you to make sure that you use everything. The same as, most sales don't get closed simply because somebody doesn't ask for the order. Right? They know how. They've been given the script. They've been told a million times, transition to the close this way, ask for the order. But it's not actually executing on it and taking action that really holds a lot of people back. So as we go through some of this stuff, you're going to hear some of this stuff and go, man, I know that. I would just challenge you to ask yourself, how often, despite that you know it, how often do you really, really do it? And then I'll be spending some time tomorrow. We'll be running through scripts. Tomorrow will be kind of an interactive role play day. We'll be going through all the scripts from calling expireds to for sale by owners to circle prospecting. Everything script-wise we'll be going over tomorrow also. And I'll be spending some time with you on that. And then the next day after that, actually day 4, I'll be back here going over the Money Tree platform with you and walking through the details on how to use that. How do I find leads? How do I load leads into the dialer, right? How do I schedule my tasks? How do I use the automation features like the touch plan and drip campaigns? All that we'll go over on day 4. Everybody getting a lot out of the day so far? Yeah? Cool. Any questions or anything right now that anybody has at the top of their mind we can stop and try to answer? No? Okay, cool. If I can get my pointer to work here, we'll be ready to go. All right, so expert knowledge. Really, this whole thing is going to be centered around sales, right? So the sales strategies to help you be more effective when it comes to working with home buyers and sellers. These are the strategies that hopefully will allow you to convert all this stuff that's going to be generated from the other topics that have been talked about. First thing that we need, right, is motivation. Everybody has some level of that. That's why you all are here, right? Motivation is one piece of the puzzle. We have to take action on it. So you'll hear me say that time and time again. But motivation is what got you here, and it is what will fuel, right, the ability for you to take action. Without motivation, who wants to take action? So if you're solidly motivated, then we can take action. Motivation is a popular word when it comes to the prospect too, right? If a person isn't motivated to make a move, to buy or sell a home, then I'm barking up the wrong tree. So I need to be living in the world of motivation, right? I'm super motivated to make these dials. I'm super motivated to ask for the appointment. I'm super motivated to ask for the listing. And I need to make sure that the other party on the end of that is motivated and willing to make a decision also. Right? So when we're talking to people, we need to make sure that we know that they have motivation, just as important as it is for us to be motivated. So some of the things that will be the category for people's motivations are listed here. Self-actualization, like who am I? What goals do I have next? Everything you went through with John Kitchens, right? That serves as motivation right there. He's given you some really clear steps to get to where you want to go from a goal perspective. Ego, right? Big house, expensive cars, nice watches, etc. I mean, I fall into that category sometimes. I'm a watch guy, so watches for me would be a motivation. If somebody had a bonus for a watch, I'd work pretty hard to get it. It had to be a decent watch, though. Social, right? Join an organization, church, Lions Club, Rotary, those kind of things can be motivation. Safety, like health insurance, life insurance, that kind of stuff. A lot of the decisions that we make are based on the motivation to keep us safe or keep our family safe also. Right? So kind of refreshing, man. It's like, who am I? Where, what's my purpose? Right? That can be your motivation. Nice things, the bling bling, right? That can be your motivation. Having a nice social persona. People know me, right? I'm popular, whatever it is. A lot of the things we do could fall into that category. Safety. And then physiological, like most of us are motivated to have a little money in our pocket so we can eat, right? Provide shelter, clothing, that sort of thing. But when you're talking to people, it's not just good to self-analyze yourself. Like, where's my motivation and what category does it fall under, right? If all of your motivation is ego-related, it would probably be a good idea to, think about why that is and maybe see if you can't balance it out with some goals in other areas. But also when we're talking to a potential home buyer, for instance, right? Why are they wanting to buy or purchase? And what category does their motivation fall under? Because knowing the category gives you the ability to really connect and build rapport with them and target pain points. And, like Tony Robbins says, people make decisions based out of two reasons, really, right? To either avoid pain or gain pleasure. It's one of those two things. So if I know what category their motivation is under, I can kind of play into that. Right? And really draw attention to the things that will help me get them to where they want to go. It's not trying to manipulate the situation or anything. It's knowing clearly where they want to go by asking the right questions and then directing them in the right way so we can get it done for them. Basic needs and desires that rule some of those motivations, right? Emotional security, self-esteem, respect, personal power, love, freedom, financial success, all of these things underscore all of those previous motivation categories. Secret of success in sales is find out what a person wants or needs and help them get it. Right? Zig Ziglar used to say that was the secret to happiness or success in sales, was to find out how to get somebody else what they want, and in turn you end up getting what you want. Questions are really the secret to that. At the end of the day. I mean, we all probably know that. I've ran into a lot of salespeople over the years that think that telling is selling, and they're just constantly telling everybody how great they are without ever asking maybe what the prospect even wants, right? If I'm telling you I have the best lasagna in town, but you don't like lasagna, like what's the point in me telling you how great my lasagna is? I'd be better off asking what's your favorite kind of Italian food, right? And then cater my presentation to that. Anyhow, salesmen's procedures, the stuff that we go through, whether it's calling a prospect on the phone, meeting with the prospect in person, the salesperson's procedures are the series of skills used in an exact order by the salesperson to complete the sale successfully the majority of the time. Right? So it's a series of skills that we have practiced ahead of time, right, that we use in an exact order to build the momentum so that we can close the sale successfully the majority of the time. If we repeat the process over and over and over and over, right, then we can perfect it and we will close the majority of sales the majority of the time. If we only use those skills and those procedures half the time, then we're never really ingraining it. We're never becoming an expert in it. We're constantly then trying to figure out why it's not working. Then we go changing up the process again, trying to find some magic solution. We just haven't put enough time and effort into repeating the process in a lot of cases. So it's the series of skills done in the exact order so we can close the deals the majority of the time. The prospect has their procedures too, right? That's why they all say they're not interested, right? That's a procedure they all learn no matter what the product. The prospect's procedures, they're a series of steps used by the salesperson to direct the mind of the prospect to make a positive decision about the product or service based upon how he or she feels it will fulfill their needs or wants. So these are the kind of things that we have a prospect go through, whether it's a series of questions, right? Whether it's qualifying. In our case, there's something called a seller's counseling interview that we make every appointment, for instance, that's going to be gone on, go through to really qualify and make sure that the motivation and everything is solid. And that kind of directs them through our series of questions also. It directs them in the area we want them to go. So hopefully we can get a positive decision about the product or service. You know, what we're talking about is helping them purchase or helping them sell their home. So these procedures and processes can be broken down into steps, as mentioned earlier. From the salesperson's perspective, we have several different procedures. We have the pre-approach, all right? This could be considered pre-approach. Right here, we're not talking to customers right now, but everything that we're doing right now is in preparation for when we would be talking to customers, right? The time that I would spend practicing my presentation so that I nail it when I'm in front of a potential customer. That's pre-approach. Practicing my script if I'm making phone calls, that hour a day or whatever it is that you spend practicing your script. Having somebody on the other side of you giving you objections, that's all part of the pre-approach. If you don't nail it on pre-approach, everything else is subpar, right? You don't have that solid foundation. So pre-approach is really important. If you have all of that nailed down, then you can take the next step, which is start using it to prospect and where you're going to find your next opportunity. So prospecting is probably why a lot of the people that we do business with, it's one of the things that is hard for them to do. Either they're uncomfortable with the idea of cold calling or prospecting people that they don't know, right? Or they just don't have time to do it anymore. So it's important to find a way to create that time or get somebody within your organization who can have, the job function to prospect, because that's where everything originates. And that's where you can get creative, all these lead sources, and with all the tools and different techniques out there today to generate lead interest. If you don't have somebody to prospect and call those leads back, it's all a moot point. And if they're not trained correctly to say the right thing on the phone or to ask the right questions, then we're still not getting the results, and we're losing money on the dollar we've invested in the labor. We're losing money we've invested in the lead. So pre-approach still got to be rock solid even before we start prospecting if it's not us. Then there's the approach. So tomorrow you're going to go over with Alex the certified home buyer's presentation, certified home seller's presentation, the script, the language, step by step, what we would do if we were in front of a buyer or seller, right? So an appointment was set, now I'm out there in front of them. That's what we would consider the approach. In order to nail it on the approach, we've got to spend some time on the pre-approach, right? Going through all the stuff that is in your book and that Alex will go in detail with you tomorrow. Building rapport is another huge part of that procedure. So that is done from step one. As soon as you or an ISA get somebody on the phone, that rapport process is being started, right? And it's important to realize, you can be in rapport and then you can fall out of rapport real quick too. So it's not like you hit some level, oh great, we talked about we both grew up in wherever and now I'm good, right? I don't have to continue to build rapport. You can fall out of it just as quickly. So we always want to constantly be trying to stay in rapport with them, find common bonds that you can talk about, right? Share stories, any kind of similar experiences, all those things will help you create better rapport, build a bond. If you're in somebody's home, be observant. Pay attention to the pictures they have, the artwork they have, right? Their interior tastes, anything that you might be able to create a conversation around or find, I have something in my life that relates to something I see here. Let's talk about it. So building rapport is a part of the salesman's procedure. Interview, needs and wants. Right? In your pre-approach, you should have a series of questions that help you identify all these things. Really clear, cut and dry questions, right? Really direct questions. If your pre-approach is done correctly, you'll have your list of those and you're going to add those in when you're at the interview, even if it's not in person and it's on the telephone, we still have a series of questions that we ask to determine the needs and wants of the customer. Presentation, again, that's what we talked about, that Alex will go over with you tomorrow, the home buyer's presentation and the home seller's presentation. Once you've presented all that information, ultimately, hopefully you say, great, let's go ahead and sign the listing paperwork and get started, or however it is you transition to a close. The expectation, I believe, should be that is really where the sales process starts, right? It starts from day one when the person is contacted on the telephone the first time or wherever, right? So the close starts on that first phone call, meeting, whatever. But until you ask them to do business with you, you have no clue where you're at, right? So as soon as I say, let's go ahead and get started, then I'm assuming they're going to tell me some reason why they're probably not prepared to move forward. And that's when we get into the objection handling, and that's really where the whole deal starts. If you're not scared to handle objections, then you should be chomping at the bit to ask for the order, because that's going to allow me to get to the objections, and that's really what's keeping us from doing business, right? Most of the time, it's not, okay, great, right? It's not just you ask for the order and they freely give it. So that's when I would expect. I wouldn't want to be scared of objections. I would want to understand that that's a good thing. Like if I have them sharing their objections with me, we're on the right path, right? But I have to ask for the order during the presentation or at the end of the presentation typically to start that conversation. Closing would be towards the end of the procedure there. From the client's perspective, we've handled their objections, and then we go for the close, asking them to sign whatever paperwork, take the next step. Do they feel comfortable moving forward with us? Whatever that is. Once we're done with that, the two post-sale procedures that a lot of people don't do is the analysis, right? So I'm in my office, I'm in my car, I'm wherever, and I do a debrief or an autopsy on what just took place, right? And what I could have done better. What did the prospect say if they didn't close right now? What clues did they give me that will allow me to close on the second meeting or the second follow-up, right? And really analyze the process. Did I nail it on my presentation? Are there questions that I didn't ask? Are there questions, that I did ask? What were the answers? And what did that tell me? So it's that analysis that a lot of people don't do. It's just important on the deals that you get as it is the ones you don't get. All right? The ones that you don't get provide the best learning ability. Like for an ISA, for instance, if they set an appointment for somebody and the agent was to go out on that appointment and it's a terrible appointment, the person tells them, I thought you were bringing a buyer or who knows what, right? That call is priceless to go back and listen to from a learning perspective, because we can really look for what hints were given that are indicating kind of what we know took place now, right? What could we have asked that would have flushed some of this out? So it's fun to listen to your victories, right? It's easy to go back and listen to those or to visit like, wow, what did I do that made that so great? But really don't shy away from looking at the ones that maybe don't always end up as wins also. And then the procedure that most people drop the ball on is follow-up. I think only 47% of salespeople follow up more than twice. And statistics show that it requires like 5 to 8 follow-ups even after meeting for a close typically. And so it comes down to like only 8% of salespeople follow up more than 4 times, right? So that's really, if you can become really good at following up or put a process in place, like having an ISA, for instance, to do those follow-ups for you, then you'll kill it, because that's what nobody else is doing. Everybody makes that first follow-up call or that second follow-up call, but when it gets to the third and the fourth and the fifth, that's where the ball gets dropped, right? Or I made 2 or 3 calls and they didn't answer. I didn't get them on the line. So who's going to make that 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th call attempt to get them on the phone? Because today, I think the statistics also show that it takes like 8 to 12 dials to get somebody on the phone, even these days. We're so accustomed to being slammed from all sides with sales or somebody calling you or whatever that we just ignore numbers, first of all, that we don't recognize, right? I do. I ignore numbers if I don't recognize it. So if you made 1 call attempt to some lead and they didn't answer, that ain't enough. We got to make 10 to 12 probably to make sure we get them on the phone. So those are all of our procedures from a salesperson's perspective. If we take each one of those steps and we make sure that we can execute on them like at a level 10, right, then we add it all up together and we're going to have a lot of success. From the prospect's procedural perspective, there are some things that we want to make sure that we get from them. Number one is their attention. Right? If anybody's ever seen Glengarry Glen Ross, this probably looks familiar. The AIDA, do I have your attention? Are you interested? Can you make a decision? All that kind of stuff. Right? Does that sound familiar to some people? A couple people were laughing. I grew up on that kind of stuff. Boiler Room, Glengarry Glen Ross, Wall Street. There's some other ones. Wolf of Wall Street now, the newer one. But anyhow, so we need to get their attention. Usually getting their attention is going to be your value statement, whatever it is. Right? As expert advisors here in Dallas, our value statement really to get their attention is that we have a proven, repeatable system that is backed by market research, and it helps homeowners sell their home for up to 18% more money than what a typical agent would usually do. Right? And so that's just one example of a value statement we would use to get their attention. I could say something like, the reason I'm calling is, we have a proven, repeatable system that works for people like you trying to sell their home, and it usually results in them getting up to 18% more money than what they would get with a traditional agent. So we've got to get their attention somehow. Then we have to develop interest. Right? A lot of that may be just asking simple questions like, do they plan on making a move in the next 12 months or so? Right? If you were to guess, when do you think you'd make your next move? If you were to move, where do you think you might go? Is there anything that you don't have right now in your home that you might want if you were to purchase a different home at some point in time? Trying to uncover whatever interest there might be if they don't give it up, right? If it's not already known. The desire, right? So if they want a lake view, why? Do you boat a lot or something like that? It's about asking questions. I've got interest. Let me see why they're interested in that. That's going to be the desire. So I've got their interest, or I've got their attention. They're interested because of, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are they? That would be our conviction stage, right? Would you move in the next 60 days, for instance, if somebody offered you a fair price? That kind of stuff will tell us how convicted and how motivated they are. If somebody's a level 2 on motivation, do you want to spend a whole bunch of time trying to speak with them or meet with them? Probably not, right? You want to draw the line somewhere. And then take action, right? We want to ask them to take action, whether it's setting an appointment to meet, whether it's respond to my email just so I know you got it. Find some way to get them to take action. And then ultimately asking them if they're prepared to make a decision. Right? If I was to come out there and I do meet with you and everything did make sense, are you prepared to make a decision? Even if it was no, even if you told me that you didn't want to work with me, will you give me a decision when I come out there and meet with you? Right? And by doing that, we're trying to take off the plate, because most salespeople don't want to ask that in the first place because they're scared that they're going to lose the deal by asking about, give me this decision thing. At the end of the day, that's what we want. As soon as they give me a decision, I can start going on to the handling objections. Right? Why they've given me the decision that they did. But if I'm scared to ask them to make a decision, I just draw the whole thing out. And either I get weary of the whole deal and tire out, or they do, and they shut off and they're not engaged anymore. Right? So sometimes just asking them, when I come out there, whether it's yes or no, just promise me that you will give me a decision. Fair enough? Right now, hopefully they don't say, well, I need to think about it when you come out there, or you can remind them that, remember when I talked to you before, we made an agreement that you would give me a decision. So let's go over what's important to you in making the decision today and figure out what is still unclear. Right? But you're going to give me a decision. So the pre-approach, talked about, super important. This is the planning stage. When you guys got into real estate, you probably did a pre-approach, right? You did some research on what it was going to take, what the income levels would be for you, so on and so forth. Our pre-approach is simply the planning and the preparation that a professional salesperson needs to complete before he or she can effectively approach a prospect. There's plenty of people out there approaching prospects with no pre-approach, right? And it's different every single time. They've got some different thing they're saying all the time. They can't really figure out where they can get better or where they suck, because they're doing something different all the time, right? So I can't ever really figure out what the issue might be. So if you plan and prepare, you've got the foundation to do the same thing every time, and then you can fix whatever needs to be fixed, if there is anything. Oh, let's see. Knowledge, all right. Let me make sure I didn't skip a slide here. It looks like we have duplicate slides. All right, so that's the same as the one we just went over. So know your competition. What is your competition doing that you're not? This is an exercise that I would recommend you just take some time and go through on your own when you're back at the hotel room tonight or whenever on the plane back home. But it's an honest self-analysis. Just like when I'm analyzing my sales call or my sales meeting, like if I say, man, Jeff, you were awesome, like that ain't honest, right? So it's really important to be honest with yourself. If you have competition in your marketplace, which everybody does, and they're killing it, doing it better than you, rather than to get upset or try to ignore that, like what are they doing that's so good, right? What are they doing better than me? So if you can list your top 3 competitors, number one, that's great. You know who they are, so we could just kind of copy some of what they do, and we could probably get somewhere. List 3 of their strengths and list 3 of their weaknesses. And that right there gives you kind of a roadmap on things that you can, right, focus on being really good at and either match or surpass your competition. I mean, the old saying goes, like, if you want to make $1 million, you just hang around with people that have made $1 million, right? You don't hang around with the guy who's making 50 grand a year. Although his ideas and his intentions are great, right? Rather hang around with the guy who's already made $1 million. So if I have competitors out there that are at 500 transactions a year or 200 or wherever, right? And that's where I want to be, then let me see what they're doing and see if I can replicate it. Let me see what they're doing terribly, and maybe there's a niche. If I can kill it in what they're doing bad, right, there's a place for me to grow right there too. So prospecting, the lifeblood of selling. If you have no pipeline, it's a volatile business, right? Without a pipeline, there's so much uncertainty and volatility that a lot of people just can't hang in there. So a prospect, what we're looking for when we're prospecting, is a qualified person in authority and in a favorable mood who has a need or want that can be satisfied by our product or service and who has the financial capacity to make that purchase or to make that decision. They have to be a person in authority, right? I mean, sometimes you could be talking to somebody who maybe it's the husband and the wife inherited a piece of property, and it sounds like he's part of the decision, but he ain't on the title because it was inherited, right? And his wife owns it free and clear, and he's not involved. And so you spend a lot of time telling him how great we are and we're going to do this and that. He really can't make a decision, right? So we want to make sure that we're talking to the person who's in the authority position to make the decision. Is there anyone else involved in the decision? Would they be there then when we meet? Right? Do they feel the same way if we're talking to somebody who's not the sole decision maker? So make sure we've got the person who is the decision maker. They have the need or the want, right? So they want to buy, they want to sell, and they have the ability financially to make it happen, right? Especially if we're talking about somebody looking to purchase a home. So where do we go for prospects? Right, there's a long list of areas that you can go to find prospects, from Craigslist all the way down to present clients on the right side. And everybody probably uses a little bit of all of this. I mean, everybody's calling expireds, I'm sure, right? Who here is part of their MO every day to be hitting up expireds and cancels and for sale by owners? Show of hands. Who all is doing that? Right, so not a whole lot actually in here. But the reality is that so is every agent, right, in your market area probably. So some of the things we talk about here in the next section, nurturing is going to be a way for us to build a pipeline of business that nobody else is going after. But for the most part, everybody's calling expireds. You know, past clients and present clients, that's an area that's missed a lot of times, right? A simple script and having phone calls placed into that kind of a group can find referrals and new opportunities all the time that are sometimes overlooked. Farm areas, which is circle prospecting, right? If you have areas you know that have a high turnover rate or that carry a certain number of transactions annually, right? And you want to get a little piece of the market share in those areas, that's another place that you can find prospects by calling into those areas or mailing to those areas or door knocking in those areas. I mean, my advice would be you can talk to a whole lot more people via phone than going out there and door knocking. There's a positive to both sides, but you know, if time is an issue, man, I can call 200 roofs in a short period of time on the telephone versus out there, knocking on the doors. I wouldn't talk to as many people. But event-based data, divorce, tax liens, all those things. So this is a long list of areas that you can get prospects from. So prospecting by the telephone, usually it's done for the purpose of getting an appointment to meet, right? So calling on the phone, seeing in person, sending a letter in advance, or capturing them from the internet are ways to get an appointment. Calling on the phone, that is the one thing that people seem to avoid everything in the world to do. Like, give me this tool that does this so I don't have to pick up the phone and call them. Or give me another tool that does this so I don't have to pick up the phone and call them. Right? We spend all this time to capture a lead, and then we don't want to always pick up the phone and call them. So that's the biggest thing that I would do. First step is anytime somebody's talking about somebody with me, I'm like, let's just call them. Do you have the telephone number? Let's just call him. Like, we can sit here forever and be like, let's just pick up the phone and call him. All right, so that approach really cuts to the chase. But those are some of the ways we can get an appointment. Even if it came from the internet, still got to call them, right? If you have an ISA, somebody who's making calls for you or on behalf of your team, right, we would want them to prospect and be warm and friendly on the telephone, polite and courteous. You need somebody who's making those calls that can talk clearly, who's well-spoken, is going to talk at a fair pace, right? Not so fast that nobody can hear them, not so slow that people tune out. Anybody making a large volume of calls on the telephone needs to be prepared that a lot of those calls will end up in no's, right? So expect a no in a large percent of calls is required for anybody who's going to be making serious number of dials on the telephone, right? You may have days where you dial 400 or 500 contacts or leads and you get nothing, right? But those 400 or 500 leads led you into tomorrow's, right? And for every 1,000, let's say, you start getting stuff. So it's always that work that you put forward. At the end of a period of time, we can break down and really see how much every dial is worth. You can take how much business you do at the end of the year, how much of that was generated from stuff I did over the telephone, take that dollar figure and divide it out by how many dials you think you made if you have a CRM or a platform that counts that stuff, and you can see that every one of those dials equaled $10 or something like that. So even those 400 dials I made that day when I didn't get a single opportunity did pay me, right? It was just down the road. And in real estate, we all know, like, today's business doesn't always pay you right now, right? It's 90 days down the road a lot of times that we get paid for the work we're doing today. But expect no. Go for the no. There's a whole saying there. Like, the more no's you get, the more yeses you get. Force yourself to make X daily calls. Some of you might do this already. Does anybody do outbound campaigns, schedule like an hour on their calendar? You do? How many calls do you think that you make in a day? Not enough, right? Good answer. Good answer. Mike, you do calling. You loaded up 400 leads the other day, so yeah. So that's important, right? That really keeps you sharp from a sales perspective, and it puts you in front of opportunities that you're otherwise not going to get. There ain't only, some of you might do it and just didn't raise your hand, but we can do the percentage of people in this room that just raised their hand. So imagine if that represented the agents in your marketplace. Like, I can gain market share easily because nobody else here is even doing it. Right? I'm one of the 3 out of 30 that are picking up the phone and cold calling people. Right? So, man, I can capture that market share all day long. Always think of the end result, right? The sales equals income. So you can't get caught up even if you're in the mode of just meeting people. Let's say you had an ISA who's setting appointments for you and all you do is go out and ask for listings, right? If we have a day where we go to 3 listing appointments and they both grill us and say, no, I'm going with somebody else, right? We could really get down on ourselves and get in neg town, as I used to call it, like really get negative. And then that puts, like, the next appointment, man, I'm all screwed up for that one and so on. And we can eliminate that if we just focus on the end result. Like, if we do the numbers again, I know that every appointment I go on, win or lose, is worth this much money because I know that for every 10 appointments I go on, I'm going to close 6 of them. Right? So that 6, if I track the dollar figure for those 6, I can divide it out over the 10, and we can really put a value to every single appointment we go on, win or lose. Right? So then I can just say, man, I just need to go pitch 10 people. If I pitch 10 people, I don't care who says yes, who says no. I just need to pitch 10 because I know for 10 I get 6. Right? So if we concentrate on the sale equaling the income and what those ratios are, we can quiet our inner voice a lot of times. And then just smile, right? If you're on the phone and you're doing all that grinding, cold calling and stuff, you got to smile and like keep it light, right?
I put a mirror in front of me to remind me.
There you go. Yeah, that's an old technique. I love that technique. You put a mirror in front of you, and it reminds you to smile. You start talking to yourself in the mirror, too, and then all of a sudden you start using body language and so on, and then that comes across the telephone. A bunch of old tricks like that. I mean, I used to use that one a lot. We'd have full-length mirrors in our guy's office back in the brokerage firms I used to work at, financial brokerage firms. And so there'd be guys that'd be just getting all into it, standing in front of their mirror and going like this, but it really comes across on the telephone. When that's all you have, and I don't have the ability to stand in front of you, and I can't use body language in a visual way and all these other things that we can use when we're face-to-face. If you're not face-to-face, you got to use what you got, and that's your voice, and that's it, right? And how can I flex my voice? I got to get up and move around, and that's why if you see any of those movies I was talking about, none of those guys are sitting down in their chair with their feet on the desk usually, right? Yeah, jumping around and excited and everything else. So some suggestions to obtain an interview. Be cordial and respectful, right? Anytime that somebody is maybe apprehensive or maybe they're agitated because they're getting phone calls or whatever, we don't want to respond in the same way. All that's going to do is put them on the opposite side of us. So always be respectful and cordial. Ask for the decision maker, right? Make sure that we're talking to the person who can give us a decision. Positive and confident attitude is required, right? If you don't have a positive and confident attitude, they will smell it, they'll feel it, and it'll create uncertainty for them. And people don't buy when they're uncertain. They don't commit to anything when they're uncertain. If you're positive and confident, that'll even make up for you really not knowing what you're talking about. I mean, in some cases, I've seen where enthusiasm makes up for lack of product knowledge or saying something stupid sometimes, right? If you're enthusiastic and positive enough, it'll make up for a lot of other things that maybe aren't as good. An attention grabber. So that could be something like the 18%. Here's what I would suggest. I think we should take 60 minutes. You should meet with my agent. I think that it will equal you getting maybe up to 18% more when it comes to selling your home. If that equals $20,000 or $30,000 more when it comes to selling your home, that'd be worth the 60 minutes that you spend. Wouldn't you agree? All right, that'll grab somebody's attention. Divide that out. You take that 60 minutes over 20 grand, that's how much a minute you're getting paid to listen to what our proven repeatable system is. But that hopefully will grab somebody's attention. You guys all probably have some ultimate or unique selling propositions that you use. So I would constantly be in the mode of coming up with new ways to articulate your value to grab their attention. Limit your time and theirs, so kind of cutting to the chase, right? It's a crutch that I've run into with a lot of salespeople who just kind of want to talk forever and wait, convince somebody to finally say, okay, I'm ready, Jeff. Now that you've said all of that, I'm ready to meet, right? And they'll just keep talking and talking with the thought that sometime that person's going to say that. In most cases, they're not. Right? And the more time we take up of theirs and the more time we spend of ours, we lose the momentum that we're trying to obtain. So be direct. If you want somebody's business, ask for it. Don't say, so based on what you told me, what do you think? You think you might be interested maybe in meeting with me if the time comes? Oh my gosh, right? You lost me already. So, hey, based on what I've told you, do you think you'd be open to working with me? Just really direct. Limit your time and theirs and ask for their business. We're not asking for their business we could assume the sale and assume we're going to get all of it, right? Every time I ask, I'm going to get it. But really, I'm asking for their business to figure out where we're at, either yes or no. I'm assuming you're probably going to have some concerns, so I'm ready for you to say, no, I'm not ready yet. And then we can move on to the real sales process, which is finding out what's holding you back, addressing those issues, and circling back and asking for you to do business with me once I've answered those concerns. All right? But if we don't ask for their business, we're just throwing darts. One of them hopefully hits the target. Got no clue what this person's hot button is, but I'm just going to give them everything. Knowledge. The first 30 or 60 seconds of the approach can, and most oftentimes does, determine the outcome of the sale. Always put your prospect at ease by being at ease yourself. So that is all in the pre-approach, right? Usually reluctance when it comes to the sales presentation, when it comes to making phone calls, when it comes to asking for an order. All that reluctance, in my experience, usually comes from a lack of training. Right? You didn't spend the time to know the script. You don't know your rebuttals, so you're scared to ask them for the order because you know here's going to come the objections, and you're not prepared to handle the objections, so no wonder you don't want to ask them point blank if they want to do business. Right? So the pre-approach, again, a lot of this stuff ties back to. But that first 30 seconds to 60 seconds, whether you're in person or on the telephone, you need to be sharp and enthusiastic, know what you're talking about. That will help you get their attention and make a good first impression. Jordan Belfort with the Wolf of Wall Street, who travels around the country now selling the straight line sales system, he talks about 7 seconds when you get somebody on the phone is what you have to get their attention. And same thing, you need to show them that you're enthusiastic, that you're sharp as a tack, and that you're a person of authority. Those are his 3 things. But if I have all those things, then I've got your attention probably, right? Which is what we're really trying to do. 3 things people look at when you meet them for the first time. Appearance, right? So we'd want to show up like nobody else is showing up. Mental attitude, right? So if you're a little scared, nervous, or flustered, whatever, they'll pick up on it, and that's probably not going to help you when it comes to closing a deal. People notice these things. And then preparation. People can tell if you're well prepared also. So those are 3 things that the prospect is probably going to notice. Well, this guy seems really prepared, or she seems really prepared. Well, they're dressed really professionally. Those things. Mental attitude, they were positive, upbeat, enthusiastic. Yeah, I liked it and enjoyed meeting with them. Rapport and etiquette. So this is really more in line with when you're meeting with somebody, right? We want to build rapport and etiquette. We want to be at ease ourselves. That will set them at ease. We want to observe the surroundings. That will give us the ability to talk about some things that we have in common, to find some similarities, to give them some compliments, maybe on decor or whatever. All that will go towards building a bond. And we want to maintain control of the sales process. Right? And in short, the easiest way to maintain control of the sales process is by asking questions and then confirming the answers. Right? There's an old saying, questions are the answers and answers are the questions. So you can kind of get right to a close ultimately without it being some big fancy thing, all through a series of questions and then taking the answer that somebody gives you, reframing that into another question. At the end of the day, all these questions lead to the logical conclusion, which if they answer the questions, right, then it would be doing business with you. If you ask the right questions and they answer it appropriately, then the next step seems pretty easy. Topics of discussion that you can bring up, right, to kind of create small talk with people. For men, sports, cars, business, etc., awards, and so on. I think this is kind of funny because, there's probably plenty of women in this room that would have just as good of a time talking about sports and cars. So I don't know. It's a little one-sided maybe. There's probably some guys in here that would like to talk about decorating too. I don't know. Maybe with the pink shirt. I don't know. Just kidding. Pets, I have 2 dogs, right? So it's an easy one for me. I can always get into a conversation with pets because it seems like one out of 2 people has pets, traveling, all that stuff. Just ways to engage in conversation to get people to open up. Remember, the prospects have procedures, and one of their procedures is, I got a wall up, right? You're going to try to sell me something, so I got my wall up. I'm guarded. So they don't have like a long script of their rebuttals or how long they keep this guard up, right? They're not really that good at it. So as soon as you start asking really authentic questions, they're not prepared for that. They don't know how to fake talking about their pets that they have or fake talking about where they plan on traveling. So when you engage someone in that kind of conversation, you get real answers, real information. They can't keep a wall up and do that at the same time. So it starts to bring down that wall. And if we don't think that there's a wall up, we're fooling ourselves. Right? The whole deal is really to break down that wall from the first time that we contact or meet with them down to the point where they're then willing to trust us. They like us because they know us enough by that point. And then they're willing to take our advice when we recommend that they do this or they do that. But that's where all this rapport building and building a bond, right? That's where it all becomes really important. It's not just a saying. I know, like, of course, be nice to everybody, find something in common. But really, if you do it with a strategy in mind, it helps you get real answers and get honest feedback that helps you close deals. So interview. You can discover during the interview, what we're trying to do is we want to discover the prospect's needs or wants. Right? So do they want to make a move or do they want to purchase? Right? We can make some assumptions all day long, but there's nothing like having them say, I want to do this. Right? I want to make sure that I don't make any assumptions. Can you just clearly tell me what it is that you want to happen? Right? I want to make sure I don't misunderstand anything. We can obtain valuable information. Right? We can't really obtain anything if we're doing all the talking. So the interview is just that. They should be doing most of the talking. If you watch an interview on TV, right, the interviewer is asking the questions, trying to get the interviewee to talk as much as possible. No different here. We can gain the prospect's interest by talking about them and their business. We can talk about pets and decorating and all that other stuff too. We can uncover objections that the prospect may not normally tell us. Right? So the longer that we can keep them talking, the better questions that we ask, they'll oftentimes give information that they were kind of trying to be guarded about. Right? Because they knew, man, if I tell Jeff that this is why I'm not doing something, he's going to attack on it, man, he's going to ask me to do business. Right? So they'll sometimes try to hide those things, but they're not that great at it. So if you start asking questions and stuff centered around it, it'll end up coming out. And that's what we're really trying to figure out, right? What their concerns are. And not everybody is always going to say, here's my list of concerns. You can learn what the prospect's dominant motivation for buying or selling is. Right? That's really important. And once we could take a look, for instance, at all the past seller business that we've done in the last year. And like there's a common theme. What was the largest percentage motivated by? Right? So if you found that most of your business last year was motivated by people that were moving because of a job, right? Then I know, boom, that's for me, that's the money zone. So anytime I'm talking to somebody now and they say that they're motivated because they're needing to make a move, right? That triggers something for me to tell me they're a high quality prospect, for instance. I know that that's part of my ICP or my ideal customer profile. You can develop rapport with the prospect, right? So that's all done through the interview process. You can make the sale without high pressure, right? And so a lot of times a high pressure sale, it just happens so quick, like, hey, my name is Jeff, I just met you, and now let's go ahead and sign the paperwork so we can get started. Whoa, hold on a second, right? We just met. There was no interview to understand what the needs or wants were. You didn't tell me how, your value or your solution was going to solve the problem. So a lot of times without that, the interview, it is a high-pressure sale, and people these days don't typically respond too well to that. Really what we want to do is make it feel like it's their choice. Right? Here's all the information we have. This is what we've been able to do for other home buyers, or this is what we've been able to do for other home sellers. You tell me, does that sound like something that might interest you? You can tell me no if you want. Right? Again, not being scared of getting the no, because I know that the no just leads me to, okay, why? Right? And then I really get to start the sales process. We can build an effective presentation based on the answers we receive in the interview. Right? If somebody was to tell me price doesn't matter, I just need to sell it in the next 2 weeks, then I really don't need to go on some long tangent about how we're going to get them the most amount of money, right? I need to change my presentation to be oriented around, we're going to get this thing sold for you immediately. Right? So if we ask the right questions in the interview process and we know what their motivation is, their need and their want is, then we can tailor make our presentation to fit for what it is that they want. And all of that also helps qualify the prospect. So I know I'm talking with the decision maker. I know that they're willing to make a decision. They're willing to purchase or list in a certain amount of time. When we come out there, as long as everything makes sense, they're willing to move forward. Those are all things that we would typically ask in my office, for instance, before sending any agent out to meet a prospective seller or even a buyer. Right? These qualifying questions would be asked with the understanding that that's going to flush a lot of people out, and we're going to, people will fall out, end up not meeting, right, because they don't get qualified, which is what we want. Rather than running all over town trying to meet with everybody, we just want to meet with the people that are highly qualified. And if they're not willing to answer the questions, then fine, move on, in my opinion, right? I'm not one to chase everybody down. If they don't want to ask the questions, move on. I'm going to spend my time with the willing party. So transition statements between rapport and interview, right? So how do I go from, oh, that's interesting. You know, we've helped a lot of homeowners in that area also, you know, and then transition into, let me ask you a few questions. So one of the ways we can do that is here in quotes. In order to better determine how we could help you or your company, this is kind of talking from a general perspective, to determine whether I can help you or your company and how I might serve you best, I need to answer a few questions. I need you to answer a few questions. Would that be all right? That's an example of a transition. That's really general, not really tailored to real estate. We'll go through some other examples here in a little bit. But the presentation should be tailored so that the selling points show the benefits directly relating to your prospect's needs or wants. Just like I said, if someone wants a quick sale, then our presentation is directed towards what we're going to do to ensure that the property sells quick. Right? If they want to purchase a home rather quickly, here's what we're going to do to save you time, really streamline the process so we can find exactly what you want as soon as possible. If they want something more related to price, this is what we're going to do to ensure that your home sells for top of market. Right? Or what we're going to do to ensure that we get the best, most affordable deal for you when it comes to purchasing your home. We need to tailor make our presentation for what's important to them. Shouldn't be too long, 20 or 30 minutes. A lot of times it will go longer than that. You know, I mean, honestly, we'll block out an hour to an hour and a half if we're sending an agent out to meet somebody on the calendar. We'll block an hour to an hour and a half. But 20 to 30 minutes, I mean, what we're really trying to say there is if it needs to be longer, it needs to be longer, but it's got to be quality content. Right? There has to be value. It can't just be an hour because I'm blocking out an hour and 20 minutes of it is dull and boring. Right? If you can get the message across and end on a high in 20 or 30 minutes, awesome. Right? If it needs to be longer, then make it longer, but just make sure that it's all about value and matching up your solution to what they want and need. And there's a high point right when you've got them here, and that's when you want to go for a close. Right? If you were to look at the sales process, it kind of looks like an EKG in a lot of cases. They go up and they get really high and motivated based on your thing. Then sometimes they'll come down, they got concerns. Then you bring them back up by articulating your value and answering those concerns. And ultimately, you ask for the orders when you have them really up here on a high. So if I was to say our proven repeatable system can get you up to 18% more, based on what we've gone over, can you see how that would work? Yes, right? That'd be the perfect time to transition to a close. So prospects, procedures, all part of the plan presentation. What we're trying to do, again, is to make sure that we have their attention, that there is indeed interest there and a desire, that they're convicted and motivated, and that they're willing to take action, right? So do they want or need this? That's what the question the customer is going to be asking themselves is, right? So I need to make sure that I'm, in my presentation, answering that. Based on what you told me, this is where I think we can help you. Because you said that you wanted this, right? Will your services satisfy the needs? You'd mentioned that you wanted to get top dollar for your property. Here's how I think that we can achieve that. Will your company back it up? Is the salesperson credible? Is the price justified? And why should I buy now? These are all the things that your customer is probably thinking in their head. So we should answer those questions in our presentation, right? Without them having to express these concerns. Be great if we could get them to and expand on it. But we know generally these are the common questions they're asking themselves. And so I can be ahead of the game by planning my presentation to answer a lot of these. So do's and don'ts. Number one, we do need to get their attention. Make a smooth delivery. Obtain their interest. Are they interested in moving? Are they interested in buying? Are they interested in selling? Straight and direct. And accept their answer, right? If they tell you no, they're not interested, then they're not interested more than likely, and move on and get on to somebody else who might be. Maintain eye contact if you're person to person, right? Build the desire. So that's really about building what they want, talking more about it, why they want it, how it would feel if they had it, all those kind of things. Be enthusiastic. Include the benefits, right? The benefits of working with us, the benefits of working with our team. If you have visuals, charts, videos, anything like that, that's a much better medium than just a bunch of text, so I would use those. Ask questions and use trial closes. We'll get into a little bit more of that later. Trial closes, just basically confirming their opinion on something. Like, does that make sense? Would you agree? If we could do this, would you move forward? Those kind of things are trial closes. Show confidence, right? That will instill confidence in the customer to make a decision. A lot of times people are just worried about making the wrong decision, right? It's a big decision, and maybe they've made bad decisions before in the past, and a lot of times they're concerned about whether or not they're going to make the right decision, or they're concerned about making the wrong decision. So if you're confident in your ability advising them, right, and you tell them that I'm sure it's important to you to make the right decision, I just want you to know that I think that this is the right decision. You won't be disappointed. I mean, if you're confident in saying that, sometimes that's all they need. They just need some reassurance that they're making the right decision, right? And if you advise them correctly, hopefully you're advising them in the direction that would be the right decision. Or advising them to not go in a direction because it would be the wrong decision. Use facts and evidence, right? Social proof, third-party information. Scan the headlines every day, every week for information that you can use talking to prospects so they don't just have to believe what you're saying, right? I mean, there was an article that came out a month ago or something. It was a 2016 Zillow report, and the one nugget that I got out of it that we use in our office is that through all the home buyers and home sellers that were surveyed last year, they all shared number one concern. They shared the number one concern between all of them was that they didn't start the process sooner than what they did. Whether that was buying a home or selling the home, all the people surveyed shared the same concern that they wished that they had started the process sooner. Right? I mean, doesn't that sound familiar to people right now that are saying, no, I want to wait until July, right? I want to wait until it's, when I'd like to be on the market, right during peak season, then I want to start planning. That doesn't make any sense. But we can use.
Because there was more days on market, there was more inventory, so more supply than demand. I mean, was that in the article?
Are you asking me? No, I didn't see that. No. I mean, since it was on a national level, it's hard to say, right, because some certain areas. But I think basically it is that people underestimate, right, how much time it takes to get a lot of this stuff done. They think if they come out and meet today, that their home's going on the market tomorrow, right? And it isn't that way all the time. Or they underestimate the planning that needs to be done in order to have an effective strategy, right? I mean, we want to have our planning done well ahead of time. So all those things, if you articulate that value and give that advice and you share information from third-party sources like that, in a survey that was done with all home sellers last year, the number one concern that was shared was that folks didn't start the process sooner.
What survey was that?
That was a Zillow survey, 2016. You could probably find it on Google by just searching 2016 Zillow report, and it'd probably be the most recent result. Yeah, right.
You should let them know up front that it's going to take 2 weeks to get virtual tour photography.
And here's the advantage, right? Here's the advantage in meeting now is that we can take the time without any pressure to make sure that we position your property and price it properly so that we can get it sold and that we can get it sold for top of market. And we have the advantage to use time right now to make sure that we have that strategy nailed down. And we may not decide to list until whenever, right? But at least we'll have the data that will dictate that, and we'll have a strategy in place.
Love your scripts.
Yeah, so some of this stuff we'll go over tomorrow. Some of it I have written down in other places. But I would encourage you to come up, with your own value statements as well that fit your team. Your strengths and what kind of victories your team has. Craft some statements around those things so that you can really articulate the value. So what we don't want to do is make a presentation to an unqualified prospect. Nothing worse than that, right? Bunch of wasted time, and if we measure what our time is worth, a couple of those can cost you a lot of money. We don't want to wing it. Like I said before, even if you're good at winging it, I think wing it pretty good. But what I can't do then is go back and measure. If I'm talking to Wojo, all right, Sylvester, Wojo, all right. That's an original last name. I know somebody with the last name Washnicki, too.
It's a nickname.
Is that how you pronounce it, Washnicki?
No. But you're close. That's why it's Wojo.
Okay, yeah, so somebody like me doesn't try to say it and screw it all up. But if I asked Wojo here to do business with me, and I was winging it, and he says no, and then I go over here and I ask Marco to do business with me, and he says yes, but I was winging it, like how do I know what worked? Right? Since I didn't do the same on both, I really don't know. Or I could say that maybe this one works with him, so then I can try that. But if I'm winging it, the point is that usually, you're not sticking to the same thing all the time. So the best way to get predictable results is to stick with the same thing every time. That's why everybody uses scripts. We don't want to show hunger or nerves. Like I don't want to be like, oh, I got to close this deal, otherwise I can't pay my rent, right? If you can become too desperate, it's visible. Argue or contradict, nothing will shut down the sales process any sooner than that, right? There used to be a time like I used to be like, oh, I'd argue with people, and it just doesn't work anymore. I think that there was a time when you could kind of pressure people into stuff, but people made a lot of bad decisions based on taking action in those circumstances. So now most customers, right, are really wary of that. So I think these days, advising, consulting works a lot better than trying to strong-arm people into doing things or argue with them. You're wrong. This is why. That stuff just doesn't work much anymore, especially not in this particular product. Show lack of enthusiasm. I mean, if you're not enthusiastic, nobody's going to react to you well. On the other hand, if you're really enthusiastic, it will make up for a lot of other things. Right? I always tell the story. We're in Frisco right now, but this is Collin County, right? Fort Worth is a town just west, and it's in Tarrant County. So we used to raise a lot of money for oil and gas drilling that was done here in Texas. And there was this kid that worked next to me who would make $300,000 a year, right? Young kid, like 23, no college education or anything, just enthusiastic as hell, getting on the phone, asking people for their business. And he would tell people that we were drilling in Fort Worth County all the time. There's no such thing as Fort Worth County, right? But nobody would ever catch it. Nobody would call him out on it. He was so enthusiastic that people just gave him a pass or didn't hear what he said, heard more of, man, this guy's really excited. What's he talking about? So enthusiasm will overcome a lot of stuff. I mean, Mike, you spend a lot of time on TV and everything. Your enthusiasm probably delivers the message as much as any of the verbiage, right? And the stuff that I add on to when I'm talking like that, that's the stuff as simple as it is, like the pre-approach, the enthusiasm, asking for the order. The reason I harp on that over and over, because as simple as that sounds, that's the stuff that people overlook. And at the end of the day, if I come into your office and look at like how we can increase productivity, it's usually like we're not asking for the order enough. We're not making enough dials. We don't know our script. It's not some fancy, issue that's holding us back. What's up, Mike?
You mentioned gestures, and one of the things that happened was I was on the radio before I was on TV, and people, when I got on TV, said, I listen to you on the radio all the time, and you really do gesture a lot.
So they were picturing you gesturing on the radio.
They can hear it.
Right.
They can hear you gesturing on the radio.
There you go.
Why? That's why I do it standing up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I'm broadcasting, I have a microphone that adjusts up, and I stand up and I talk with my hands.
Yeah. Motion creates emotion. I mean, I had brokers that worked for me, and I would take their chair away. I mean, they just couldn't sit down.
You're more enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm.
You're more energetic. You like to reach through, and people say it all the time. It sounds like I'm reaching through the phone. It's that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, most of us, if we're having a genuine conversation with like our spouse or a friend or whatever, I mean, don't we kind of naturally talk like this anyhow? So why should it be any different if we're talking to a product, like we're trying to get somebody to do business with us? We should even more so use all the tools that we got, right? Lack of enthusiasm is a deal killer. We want to be over-enthusiastic, if anything, right? And then tone it down by saying, you'll have to excuse me. Sometimes I get really excited, right? Use trade terms. I used to do that all the time in the oil business, be talking to people using trade terms, thinking that showing them how smart I was going to close a deal. All that does is confuse people, and then people don't buy when they're confused. So my advice to people is always break things down to the point where you could explain it to a fifth grader and they could understand it. Like if you break it down to that level, people will appreciate it. Because people generally just give me the simple stuff. right? Break it down to the simplest common denominator. So when we use trade terms and language, because we're in real estate and we eat, sleep, and breathe it 24 hours a day, we assume that they know what we're talking about when we use some of the terminology that we do. Little do we know that that is actually turning them off in some cases, or they get confused and their pride won't let them tell us that they're confused and they don't understand, so they just shut down. They don't answer a phone call. They don't communicate, right? Because they don't want to say, I don't know. Talk too long or too much, right? Telling isn't selling. So always ask a question, and that's one way to stop that. Do you follow me? Are we on the same page? Do you understand the point I'm trying to get across? Check their temperature the whole way through. Forget to cover all buying decisions, right? Part of the qualifying, we want to make sure that we ask all the hard questions, anything that would be involved in the decision process or anything that we would need in order for them to qualify. We want to make sure that we don't cheat by not asking those. The questions you don't ask will be the ones that end up being the deals that hold you back from closing. Don't want to chew gum and smoke, right? Pretty simple stuff there. The presentation ends in a sale either way. It's an old saying, either they close you on why they don't want or need your service or solution, or you sell them on why they do. The best salesperson wins, right? If done correctly during the prospecting and the qualifying and everything, I should have already determined that they want or need my service, right? If I did my job asking the right questions on the front end. So the only reason that they shouldn't be doing business is either that they can't make the decision, they're not the person in the position to make the decision, or they don't believe that they'll get the results that they want by working with us. It's really, if you've done your job on qualifying, those are the only two reasons why they're not doing business with you, right? Either they're not the decision maker, or they don't believe that they're going to get the results that you're saying they're going to get. Right? If you wanted to use a third one in there, it could be that they're not as motivated to sell as they might think that they are. Right? Yeah, I'm ready to sell. Shoot, bring me somebody. I got somebody. Oh, well, no, hold on a second. Right? So that could be it. But again, if I qualified correctly, I should be able to take that off the table. Same with a buyer, right? Money could be an issue that keeps the deal from going down. Well, that's something that I can qualify on, right? So if money ends up being the deal that kills a transaction when I'm working with a buyer, let me go back and do my analysis, and did I qualify money? Because that shouldn't have happened, right? We should have had that off the table before we took the step to meet, right? So trial closes are all part of that, as a matter of fact. So a trial close is asking the prospect for an opinion. The close is asking the prospect for a decision. So if I said that based on our marketing efforts, I believe that I can get more exposure to your property, which, by the way, usually results in a higher offer, I think with our strategy, we can get that done. What do you think? I think so, based on what you've gone over. That would be a trial close, right? What's your opinion based on what I've showed you? That would be the trial close. Great, then let's go ahead and take the next step by signing the paperwork so I can go back to my office and get started immediately. That would be then asking for the decision. So the key with that is you trial close the whole time. Here's our proven repeatable system. This is what we do. Does that make sense? So if we could get you up to 18% more, I'm assuming you'd be ecstatic to get that, right? Okay, good. And your time frame is to move in the next 60 days or so based on what we talked about before. Is that correct? Right? All those trial closes ultimately lead me right to great. So then the next step seems like it's pretty clear. Don't you agree? Let's go ahead and sign the paperwork so we can get started. But it's all those trial closes that build the momentum right up to it, and they also give me an opportunity to flush out anything that's going to potentially be an obstacle when I come around to the close. Right? With all those trial closes, there's an opportunity for them to go, oh, but this is a concern. Oh, but this is a concern. So hopefully when I get to the end, right, I've been able to address a lot of those concerns beforehand. So examples of a trial close could be, do you like the interior of the home, right? Or you like the interior of the home, don't you? This car will give you comfort that you're looking for. You know, mutual funds are good investments, don't you agree? That kind of stuff, right? Could you see your living room furniture here? You know, do you think it would fit? Do you think this layout would work for you and your family? All those kind of things are examples of trial closes. But also, the next step to really internalize those and to take action on those is to make sure that you rehearse them, you role play them, and you use them. All right, if you don't rehearse them and role play them, then the synapse in your mind is not going to happen quick enough for you to use it in real time. And you're going to have all this stuff, and you're going to get in your car and be like, damn, when they said that, I should have said this. Like, I know what I should have said, but I haven't role played it and rehearsed it enough so that it just happens like that. And so that's where taking action is so important. Like, we all have a lot of information that would allow us to go to the next level wherever we're at right now. It's executing on a lot of that stuff that we need work on sometimes. So rehearsing, role-playing, putting yourself in situations that don't cost you money to practice that skill set is a good way to do it. So nail downs, just kind of to tag on to any questions or statements that you make, or they're on the right side. Isn't that true? You know, based on what we talked about before, getting the most amount of money was important to you. Isn't that true? You'd mentioned that you were wanting to sell in the next 30 to 60 days. Am I right on that? Would you agree? You know, all those kind of things are really, really important in the sales process to tie on to your closing statements, to really make a part of your, make a habit out of it. And mixing them up, right? Mixing them up so you're not saying the same thing all the time. I used to say, would you agree? All the time. Everything was, so would you agree? Would you agree? Would you agree? And the only reason I really noticed that is because I go back and listen to my calls or analyze my sales presentations and be like, you know, I think I said, would you agree a lot? And at some point, I think he started looking at me like, yes, I'd agree, Jeff. So what is an objection really, right? An objection is a question in the prospect's mind which has not been answered or has not been clarified. We may have answered it, but maybe it's still not clear to them. Right? So it's another reason why we use trial closes. Does that answer that concern for you? No, not quite. Okay, what are you still uncertain about? Right? But without that trial close, if he said, well, how are you guys going to attract buyers? And I said, we got this great strategy for buyers and everything, so that does that. Now let's go on to what your next concern is. If I don't stop and say, does that answer your concern about what our method would be to attract buyers? If I don't confirm that that deal is done, that concern is no longer an issue, then I've left it open to come back up again. You know, now when I ask him to sign the listing paperwork, he's going to say, yeah, I'm just not really convinced still on your strategy to attract buyers. Oh, I went over that earlier. What the heck, right? I didn't close on it with a trial close to make sure that it was clarified for you. So a question in the prospect's mind which has not been answered or has not been clarified. Remove doubt and make the sale. Like I said, if they're motivated to sell, one of the reasons of very few that they won't do business with you is quite possibly that they're concerned that they're going to get the results. They doubt that they'll get the results that you're promising that they'll get. Common objections are they need to have their wife or their spouse think it over. I need to talk to my wife or spouse, right? Or we want to think about it. They're just looking. Maybe they want to see some more properties. They want to meet with more people. No money in closing costs, no earnest money. They don't want to give the property away. Don't want to pay a transaction fee. Appreciate you coming out and meet with some other realtors also. Those are common things that we hear. Reasons buyers have objections. They're not aware that they have a need or a want. Maybe they're not clear on what exactly they want when it comes to the home. They're not sure that the service or product that we're providing is going to be all that great, right? Concerns really about performance or getting results. They want more information. They want assurance that they're making the right decision, which in a lot of cases is really probably at the top of their list. Or they just want to test the salesperson's knowledge or ability. And most of the time, that's probably not it. It's probably more about them being concerned that they're making the right decision. Or they may want more information. I would say that those are, if you've qualified properly, it's probably those two things that are going to hold a lot of people back. When you're talking about buying, right, this is somebody who should be excited about the process. If you've qualified them correctly, finances shouldn't be an issue. So they may want more information, right, or they just want assurance that they're making the right decision. So handling an objection, the objection by the prospect is either a question, as we mentioned, or about the product or service which has not been answered, or it could be an excuse not to buy. An objection by the prospect is neither a question about the product or service which has not been answered, is either. Okay. I don't know what that's supposed to mean there. An objection by the prospect is neither a question about the product or service which has not been answered. Yeah. I don't know what was meant to be said there. But it is a question or an excuse, right? Also, there's conditions. Conditions can also be disguised as objections sometimes. Like if somebody doesn't have the money, that's not an objection, right? I mean, I can't create wealth for them, or I can't create money for them that they don't already have. So sometimes you have to ask yourself, is it a condition or is it an objection? Or is it even an excuse? Right? But if they're not the decision maker, that's not an objection or an excuse. Right? That's a condition. They're not the decision maker. That's my bad for talking to somebody who's not the decision maker. Right? So who does make the decision and how can I talk to them is where we would need to go. But asking yourself, is this a question that they really need clarity on? Is this an excuse they're just trying to blow me off? Or is this a condition maybe that I can't even fix? So to identify the difference, right, what we want to do is learn to identify, isolate, and eliminate the real reason a prospect resists buying. And also learn to determine the difference between the objections and the excuses. An excuse is typically an insincere resistance that's used to get rid of the salesperson. A lot of those sometimes sound like, I just don't have time right now. Or just call me back later. I've got to talk to my wife about it. Everything sounds good. I just got to talk to her about it or talk to my husband about it. All those, in some cases, not all the time, but some of those can just be excuses. Why would the prospect use excuses? Maybe they don't have the money. That would be my bad again, right? I would take responsibility since that's the only thing I can really control. I would take responsibility for that and look at what I could have done on the front end to better qualify them from a financial standpoint. They cannot make the decision. So if I were to ask them, are you prepared to make a decision? When we come out there, whether it's yes or no, will you give me a decision? Or tell me what's holding you back, one of those two things. However I want to phrase that, right? I should be able to kind of take that off of the table. If they don't have the authority to make a decision, that'd be my fault also for meeting with somebody who didn't have the authority. Or they just want to get rid of the salesperson. Most salespeople lose the sale on the second or third objection because they aren't prepared to handle them. How many objections does it take to get rid of you? Just a question to ask. It'll depend on how much time you spend on the pre-approach, right? I mean, you could be great at, when somebody says they want to do some work to the home. Well, great. What if we could sell your home as is without you having to spend the time and the money to do the work? Would you be open to talking about that? Maybe you're great at that, but then as soon as they give you another one, you're not so good at that. All right, so if you know them all, you should be able to go deep into the objection list, game, whatever. Like I said, most customers, they're not trained salespeople like we are. Like we have a whole list of rebuttals for a whole list of objections. They don't have a whole list of objections. Usually they've got like 2 or 3, and then they kind of run out. Right? They usually don't have 5 to 8. A couple of those might be excuses. So they might seem like they have 5 to 8 objections, but 3 of those are excuses. And as soon as you call them out on the excuse, then they go back to the same one of 3 to 5 objections, right? Well, I just don't have time right now. Well, really, them not having time right now is directly connected back to the objection that they don't understand how our system is going to work any better than anybody else's, right? So they're trying to use an excuse really when it's directly related to an objection. So still, most people will probably have 3 to 5 objections, although they might try to give you a few more excuses. So just get good at asking the right questions. Like literally, just tell me, what is your biggest concern that's keeping you from moving forward? If I were to ask you to make a list of what your top concerns are, what's at the top? Right? Find creative ways to ask questions like that that will uncover what we're really trying to get to. In a way that's got enough finesse where you're not just saying, look, tell me why you're not doing business with me. I mean, in some cases that would work too. But I would create some different ways to ask. So the formula for handling objections, and this is kind of the same thing going back to Tom Hopkins, Brian Tracy, even back before that. This is a process that is time-tested 30 or 40 years. First, answer the objections in advance during the presentation if you know that these are common objections I get all the time. right? If you know that there's a certain set of objections you get all the time, then your presentation should be made to knock those out right away, right? During my presentation, I'm going to cover these things because I know that these are usually concerns with people. If it is an objection that comes up during the middle of my presentation, there's nothing to say that I have to answer it then. I would get in the practice of using the, if you don't mind, or with your permission, I'd like to save that until the end of our presentation or at the end of our meeting. And if I haven't answered that for you in between now and then let's go over it then. Fair enough? Right? So we don't stop the whole flow of our presentation to answer this objection. And in a lot of cases, at the end of the presentation, it won't even come up again. Right? It's just something that's part of their script. Let me bring this objection up. By the time you get through with your presentation, you've either answered it or it wasn't a big enough objection or concern for them that they don't bring it up. Right? And you can use that in a lot of cases. Like if you're talking about the value, you can just say, you know what, you asked about commission. If you don't mind, I'll go over that in a minute. Let me just explain what we would do first to get you the most amount of money. If commission is still a concern for you at the end, we can talk about that, okay? Then you get through the end of the dang deal and they're not even talking about commission anymore, right? And then you don't want to be the person that goes, now, you'd mentioned commission before. Let me talk about that for you. Oh, that's right, you reminded me. I was taught to get, cheaper commission rate. So a lot of times if you just postpone the objection, it won't come back up. If it does, then you know it's a real objection. So that would be the postpone. Ignore the objection if you don't think it will come up again. Could be the same thing. Answer the objection immediately and eliminate it completely, right? If it is at the point in the conversation where we're prepared to deal with that objection, we answer it directly. We don't beat around the bush. Nothing irritates me more than like I'm asking somebody, I'm giving an objection, and I just want them to give me a straight answer back, right? And they beat around the bush and they won't give me the straight answer. Like I'll handle an ugly answer if it's an ugly answer, but just give it to me. Like I lose respect for you when you won't give me the dirt, right? So answer it directly and immediately, and then confirm it. Does that answer that for you? Is that still a concern for you? Does that eliminate that concern for you? Do you see how that would eliminate that? Whatever the case is. Neutralize the prospect, but that means I understand your concern. I can understand why you'd feel that way. I can appreciate why you'd bring that up or why that would be a concern for you. Identify the real objection in the prospect's mind. So that's going to be asking them to clarify, right? So if it was commission, I'm concerned about commission. What is it that concerns you about commission, right? I would assume usually when somebody is concerned about commission, it's because they want to get the most amount of money. They're just trying to save some money. And really it comes down to getting the most amount of money when you walk away from the sale of your home, right? Right? Really clarify what they mean. Because a lot of times we can make an assumption based on their objection, and that could be wrong. Right? We think that they're giving us this objection because of this kind of concern, and maybe it's not that at all. So we really want to get them to clarify so that we can identify what the real objection is. Hence the clarify there. Answer the objections, then do a trial close with the nail down, right? So if I could show you how we could eliminate that from taking place, or if I could show you how this marketing strategy would work better, do you think you'd be open to moving forward? Maintain control by closing immediately and smoothly. Right, so that's really the formula for handling the objections. Postpone it, see if it comes up later. Right? And often, a lot of times, it won't come back up. Neutralize them. We don't want to argue. I can understand why you'd feel that way. I appreciate your concern. However, right, transition into answering it. Make sure you understand their objection clearly. Can you tell me more why that's a concern for you? How important is that to you? Those kind of things will really allow them to expand on it. And then answer it and tie it down. Does that make sense? Does that answer that for you? Neutralizing statements, feel, felt, found is one of the techniques that you can use as a neutralizer, right? It works great in real estate because we have a long list of stories of other people that we've helped that were generally in the same situation, right? I mean, everybody in here has probably sold a listing that used to be with another agent that expired. And you're going to talk to a bunch of people over the next week or the next 30 days or the next 3 months that are coming off of an expired listing, right? So we have a lot of inventory that we can talk about by saying, I can understand why you'd feel frustrated at this point. A lot of the people that we've helped felt the same way. What they found is that our system will get the home sold. right? Feel, felt, found. I can understand why you'd feel that way. A lot of people that we've worked with felt the same way. What they found is that our system is just more effective when it comes to getting the most amount of money for your home. By the way, if we were to meet this week, would you have some time, like say Thursday or Friday? What would work better? Right? And transition right to a close. But the feel, felt, found is a really easy way to neutralize it, to build some empathy in there, and use the stories of people that you've already worked with. Right? You know, last week I was talking with a couple that had attempted to sell their home. It was on the market for 6 months. They felt a lot, I think, like you feel right now. You know, what they felt after meeting with us, you know, is that our system was going to be a good fit in getting their home sold, whatever it is. Feel, felt, found. Also agreeing with them, right? I agree with you. I might just add that when you use our service, et cetera, and you go on with your value statement. But agreeing with them is another way to neutralize it. Right? When it comes to agents, a lot of people we know have a bad opinion of what agents are or what they do or the value, right? So we can agree with that. I agree with you. You know, I mean, nationally, the average real estate agent sells 5 to 6 homes a year, right? Nationally, that's the average. So if that's who we were talking about, I'd agree with you. I understand why you feel that way. But the good news is they're not all the same. Here's what we do that really sets us apart. Right? But by agreeing with them, I really take the impact out of it. Right? I agree with you. Oh, no, I hear you. No, I agree. You know, did you know that the average agent only sells 4 to 5, 6 homes maybe a year? So I understand completely. Right? Rather than to tell them, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. That's fine, right? If they say, you know, whatever it is that they say, you know, that's fine. That's fine if you want to think about it. It's fine if you want to shop around. I'd like to explain a little bit further, though, why our product would be the best fit. The old why, right? Just asking them why, in some cases, is the quickest way from point A to point B. Can you tell me why? Why do you feel that way? Something that I learned a long time ago that really opens up the conversation is when they give you something, you say, I know you must have a good reason for feeling that way. Can you tell me why? And then shut up, right? And let them talk. Because they'll give you some really priceless information. If you nail that question and you're not scared to ask it and you don't talk over the answer, right, you'll get some really good information. So I'm sure you've got a good reason for feeling that way. Would you mind telling me why? I know you've got a good reason for saying that. Can you share it with me? Others are okay. I can appreciate that. You know, no problem. I understand. I'm cool with that. I didn't put that one on there. I probably wouldn't say that. But those are the things that we want to do immediately when we hear the objection, right? Rather than to respond rather than to react back in an aggressive or adversarial way, we want to absorb it, right? If you were a boxer, for instance, right, the sting of a punch is a lot less if I absorb it than really trying to combat it and go towards it. So when we hear an objection, I understand, no problem, right? A lot of people felt the same way. We got a whole arsenal of stuff to use to neutralize the objections. If you can't close, you can't sell, right? You're just an order taker. Prospects will only make a purchase when they recognize that they have the need or the want, and that your product or service will fill that need, and that the price at which we're talking about is reasonable, and that the time to buy is now. It's our job to figure out what that need or want is, and then it's our job to articulate just how we can provide the solution to get them to where they want to go, and just why that makes financial sense and the time is now. Right now, we're getting to that time of the year when in most people's markets, a large majority of the homes that are going to sell this year are going to be sold over the next 90 to 120 days. Right? So there's your right now, that's it. right there. I'm sure that you probably have a good sense of summertime being the peak season for real estate. But just so you know, in our market, 90% of the homes that will sell this year are probably going to sell over the next 90 to 120 days. So when I say that we should meet right now, it's not because we're going to put your home on the market tomorrow. It's because we want to be prepared and positioned, right, to really hit the ground running as we get into this peak season. Does that make sense? Can you see the advantage in meeting a little bit earlier maybe than you thought initially now? Buying signals, right? Buying signals, body language is one. If you happen to be face-to-face, there's certain cues people can give you that will indicate maybe that they're going along the lines of buying, right? If they said, I've always wanted an Eldorado and you were selling Cadillacs, I guess that would be, a good buying signal. The price isn't as high as I thought. Wow, this house is really nice. How much is this? Oh, wow, that's less than I thought it would be, right? Good buying signal. So do you think this has moved up to the top of your list then? All right, kind of see where we're at there. I'd like it delivered by Wednesday. Well, he just told me basically that he wants to buy, right? If that was the case, right? Do you think we could close on this in 30 days or sooner? If I could, are you ready to move forward? Could I please buy it now? Well, if that isn't a buying signal. Can you give me a white interior? If I could, would you purchase it today? All right. Yes, we can. They make white paint. Do you have a monthly payment plan? Some of this is not applicable to us. But, those kind of questions indicate somebody who's probably in a position to be closed or at least ask for the order. They're leaning towards buying. What kind of guarantee do you have? Right? They're telling you, I like what I'm hearing. I just want a safety net in case I don't get the results you're talking about. If I told you that we guaranteed to purchase your home if it didn't sell, I don't know, I know some people use that kind of thing. But if somebody asked you that, well, what if my home didn't sell? Will you guarantee to buy it? That's a buying signal, right? You don't even have to guarantee that you buy it. If I did, would you be comfortable listing your home with me? Let me tell you why I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to buy it, right? So the average sales nationally are made on the 5th or 6th closing attempt. How many closes does it take before you give up, right? If you're not asking 2, 3, 4 times, I don't care if it's on one sit, if it's on one phone call, you just keep asking, right? Nobody should feel like, I was sitting at the table and I'd already asked them twice to move forward and they said no, so I didn't want to ask them a third time. Like that third time was probably it. Right? Their resistance gets weaker the more times we ask also. So we always want to just keep asking. Most people aren't going to do that. So immediately you rise above your peers if you're asking for the close 5, 6 times. Just like if you're making that 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th call attempt, you're moving well above most of your peers probably. The more closes you know and the more closes you can implement in direct proportion to how much you will learn as a professional is in direct proportion of how much you will learn. So the more ways that I can transition to a close, that's what we're looking for. I can't always go, so Marco, if everything makes sense, let's go ahead and sign the paperwork. No, I still got some concerns, Jeff. Okay, what are those? And then I answer those. So if everything makes sense now, Marco, let's go ahead and sign the paperwork so we can get started. I've got to find different ways to transition and bridge to the close, right? So that I'm not asking the same exact thing every time. It'll start to sound scripted. He'll start to think I'm a robot, and this isn't a genuine deal here. It's the same thing he goes through all the time. So find different ways to transition into it. And as we go through the scripts tomorrow and on Wednesday, when Alex is going through the buyer's, seller's presentation, he'll give you some great examples of that stuff also. So when it comes to closing, the metrics are things that most people don't know that I find. When I'm talking to people and I'm asking them what's your closing ratio and all those kind of things, a lot of people don't know that stuff. So it's really important to know that. How much is each close worth to you? Is it $5,000? Is it $3,000? Right? You know what your average price is in your marketplace, and then you know what your commission is. So you should be able to figure out what each close is worth to you. What's your average close? and a formula to figure out your closing average. And that is simply the appointments that you go on, right, versus the appointments that you actually win. So if I went on 100 appointments and I got 10 listing contracts signed, I have a 10% closing ratio, right? Easy enough to figure that out. If you don't know that number, that's where you've got to start. And then we need to start building on to that. Like how many dials did we have to make to get to those appointments? How many people do we have to talk to get to an appointment? Once I'm on the appointments, how many appointments do I need to get a close? With all that information, you can really build out a roadmap to exactly where you want to go. If I had all that information from everybody's office over the past 90 days, and then you said, I want to do 500 transactions this year, based on those metrics, we could have a plan today on exactly what you'd have to do. Whether or not it'd be feasible to do would be a different story. But based on how many people you had to speak to get to the number of appointments you got in the previous 90 days, and then based on how many appointments of those you closed, we could really make a whole plan for the rest of the year to go where you need to go or where you want to go. But you got to know those numbers. A successful salesperson knows how and when to close, right? At every turn, ultimately. But especially when you've gotten an agreement that the customer sees value, right? If they've given an agreement that, yeah, I see that, or that makes sense, that's an opportunity to close. It's unfair to ask anybody to do business before they've seen the value, right? So, but as soon as they have seen the value, and better yet, they agree that they see the value, then that would be the perfect time to go for a close. If the prospect does not want or need your product or service, there is no closing technique out there that's going to cause him or her to buy. The prospect should always be made to feel that they're right. If we irritate or argue with them, it's not going to work. If we otherwise offend them, it's not going to work. We're likely going to lose the sale. And perspective pays off. Keep on closing as long as it can be done tactfully, pleasantly, and bless you. And the prospect is still receptive and interested. So no closing techniques are going to cause him or her to buy, right? A lot of salespeople get frustrated, and it's because they didn't qualify properly. And maybe they are a good closer. Maybe they got all these techniques, but they're weak on qualifying, so they spend all their time trying to close prospects who weren't qualified, who they shouldn't have been speaking to in the first place, and then they get burnt out or their confidence level goes way down. They can't figure out why they can't close anything. They're just not qualifying the prospects on the front end good enough. So they end up talking to people that nobody's going to close, right? So on the front end, ask the hard questions, because that's where you will make your money or you will lose your money. Right? If I'm spending a whole bunch of time on prospects that end up not being qualified, man, I lost a lot of money, whether it was in time or dollars. Right? So if I can spend my time and effort on the front end asking the hard questions, if that means I only go on 10 appointments instead of 20, but I close 8 of the 10, I'd rather do that all day long than to go on 20 and close 8. Some of you might just want to go on 20, which is, whatever, to each their own. We do know that most people are going to go like 80 to 90%. If it's a seller, 83%, I think. They're going to go with the first agent they meet, and on a buyer, it's like 93% go with the first agent they meet. So there's some value in being the first person they meet with. Me personally, I'm probably a little spoiled. Like I want to be really qualified. And if there's any doubt in my mind, sometimes I'm like, let somebody else have it. Close when the prospect is ready to buy. Right? So that's another good clue on when to close. How would I know if the prospect is ready to buy? Based on the buying signals that they've given. Right? If I'm actively listening and I'm asking the right questions, I'm getting them to talk, and through all that conversation, they'll give me some signals. They may, by the way, give me a bunch of signals on why they're not ready to buy, which then gives me the opportunity to what? Ask why. What's holding them back, right? So it's not just the buying signals that we want to look out for, but we want to look out for any apprehension that we hear also. It sounds to me like you're a little concerned about something I may have just said. So before moving forward, let me stop here and give you a chance to share any concern you have. right? If you think that maybe they've got something that's going on in their head based on something you said, then get it out there. You know, I feel like maybe I confused you, or maybe there's something you don't understand about what I said. Let's go over that. Or you can, and if they say, no, I understand everything completely, great, right? I just got a trial close in there without really making it so apparent. So it is necessary to get a buying decision after making a presentation, because that is when the prospect has all the information in their mind. It's fresh. They have the greatest motivation. The facts and the figures are there, and you are there to answer any questions that they have. Time kills deals. As soon as they get away from you, 24 hours goes by, you got 24% less of a chance probably. 48 hours go by, you got 50% less of a chance. I mean, 2 or 3 weeks go by, right? And those are the deals that get lost. So time kills deals. We want to drag out any concerns they have while we're there and ask for a decision to be made while they're there, because that's going to bring up the concerns if they're not ready to make a decision. And while we're there, we can go over all the facts and the figures, and any questions they have, we're there to answer. That's going to be our best chance to close the deals. If they need to think about it, we need to outline what it is that they need to think about, right? And what the process is going to be, and when we're going to get back to them, and all those things. But we're going to make a long list in the I'm going to think about it category. We're going to make a long list of things that they still need to think about. And then before we leave, we're not walking out of that door until we go back and close all those things again. So whenever you ask a closing question, don't speak. Whoever speaks loses, right? Everybody's probably heard that before. He who talks first loses. And ain't that the truth? Right? Sometimes it's the hardest thing, and there's great closers out there, great salespeople that are great, and they'll ask a closing question, and then they just can't keep quiet, and they'll talk right over it. You know, so Marco, based on what you told me, I think you're pretty well set to move forward today, huh, aren't you? Oh, you know what? Man, I forgot to tell you, one of the things that we do is, bless you, just missed the opportunity to get the close, right? Or, you know, why don't you tell me what your concerns are? Hey, by the way, or they'll just talk right over, right, the close or the opportunity to get priceless information. So when you ask a closing question, don't speak. And I mean, silence is the greatest pressure a salesman can apply. So if it's dead silent, then let it be dead silent, right? And then they'll feel the urge to break the silence by giving some information. And a lot of times that's information that like they didn't want to give, or it's usually really genuine, authentic information that gives you some insight onto how they feel, where they are in the buying process or in the sales cycle. Yes, we are almost there. Mike, did you raise your hand? Were you going to say something? Okay. Techniques in closing. So there's a few different techniques here. There's tons out there, right? But these are just a few. The assumptive close, just assuming we're going to do business. Great. How would you like your name on the agreement? Or you can just turn the listing paperwork over and hand them a pen. That's a really good assumptive close. Alternate choice close. So would you rather close on the 1st or the 15th? Right? Would you rather do a 90 or 120-day listing? Right? If you do that close, if they answer the question, inherently they've said that they're going to do business. Right? The minor point close, would you like a home warranty with this? If they say yes to that, then they've inherently agreed, right, to purchase. Or would it be all right to put a sign in the front yard? Sure, go ahead. So, right, by saying yes to that, they've said yes and letting you represent them in the sale of their home also. And it's a lot easier for them to say yes to those questions a lot of times than it is to, let's sign the listing contract. Right? And by the way, the contract is a word that everybody has been taught to not sign without reading, right? Definitely read the fine print and everything. So I really try to get in the habit of using agreement instead of contract. And I usually say initial, or try to use initial when I'm in a situation like that rather than sign. Right? Because people are taught, don't sign anything without reading it, don't do anything with contracts and so on. So simple change in verbiage sometimes can change the way people react to that statement too. If you'll just okay this agreement, we can get started. Right? Sounds entirely different than sign this contract. Why don't we go home and list your home? Why don't we go ahead and list your home today? Just really straightforward. Really like to have your listing. Can I have it? just asking for the order. In the summary close, which is a really good, effective one in this line of business, I want to make sure I understand everything correctly, and then you summarize what you guys have talked about. Based on our previous discussion or based on what you shared with me, and you outline the things that they want, right? Summarizing it, and then you close on that. So based on what you told me, you're wanting to sell for top dollar. You'd like to be, moved into your new place in the next 90 days. You're looking for something in Frisco. Does all that sound right? Great. So let's go ahead and okay the agreement so we can get started immediately. By summarizing it, we'll have a chance to uncover any objections if we've made the wrong assumption on what they've told us or we had a misunderstanding. By summarizing it, we'll be able to uncover that. Do I understand what you want pretty well? Is there anything I missed? In the last resort close, can I ask you one more question just before I go? I do this for a living, and I feel like I may have done something wrong today that's caused you not to go ahead with this or to not work with me, just so I don't make the same mistake again. Can you tell me what I could have done that would have made you feel more comfortable in moving forward, or would you tell me why you decided not to move forward? Right, and that's one by the textbook version of that is you'd be like at the door about to leave. And then you'd say, you know what, before I go, just one more thing. I feel like I may have done something wrong or maybe didn't explain something enough, and that's why you're not doing business with me today, just so I don't make the same mistake again with somebody else. Can you tell me what it was? No, you did everything great, Jeff. Oh, geez, then help me understand maybe why you're not moving forward with me. All right, it gives us a second closing opportunity. And when you're on your way out the door, like they think that you're letting them off the hook. Okay, he's not going to try to close me anymore. He's done trying to go at this deal. He's on his way out the door. Right, so then when you go, just one more thing, what could I do maybe next time I'm with somebody so I don't make the same mistake? Then they give you some genuine information. Right? They think that you're on your way out the door. Little do they know that as soon as they give you that information, you're going to try to turn around and close on it. Based on whatever they talk about, if there's an opportunity there to do so. All right, post-sales analysis. If you don't get the sale, you should always determine what went wrong and why. A lot of the times, it's going to go right back to the first phone call or the qualifying. Questions that maybe we didn't ask. So questions to ask yourself, trying to figure out maybe why we didn't get the sale, is did I identify a clear motivation to move? And how solid was that motivation? Right? Well, if somebody offered me $1 million, I'd sell. Unless their home is $1 million home, if it's $300,000 home, that's not solid motivation. We've been talking about it. If somebody came around and gave me the right price, we'd move. You have any idea where you might move to? No, I hadn't even thought about it. So that's not really solid motivation. We know that the best motivation, right, is life events, usually financial or family related a lot of the time. So we want to keep our ear to the ground, listening for what we know are the best motivations. I'm moving for a job. Our kids have moved out of schools or moved out of the house and gone to school. We're empty nesters, or we're getting up there in age and the maintenance is too much. Those are the things that if you look back at the properties that you've had the best success selling, what was the common theme in the motivation? There was some pretty solid motivation probably on most of them. It wasn't just, we thought about it. If the right offer came along, we might sell. So we want to ask ourselves, did we identify a clear motivation to move, and how solid was it? Was I clear in identifying their time frame? Right? So did I ask them, would they be willing to make a move in the next 60 or 90 days if everything lined up just right? Right? Did I ask them if they were interviewing other agents or planned to? So I want to make sure I'm asking that, give ourselves the opportunity to be there before they make any decisions. So our kind of standard go-to is, great, you're going to meet with other people. I want you to meet with everybody you feel you need to. Right? But do me a favor, before you make a decision with anybody, right, allow us to come out and share our strategy with you. So don't make a decision until we have a chance to meet with you. Fair enough? Yeah, okay. Did I qualify the prospect thoroughly? Right, a lot of your opportunity to get better will probably fall in that category. Did I ask if they were willing to list their home when we meet? Right, a lot of people will shy away from that question. That's one you should definitely ask. Anything that feels uncomfortable to ask, that's usually a good clue that you should probably ask it. Did they give me any hints that I could have caught and asked deeper questions about? If you have call recording software, just go back and listen to the calls if it's a phone call and see it. Did they give me any hints? Did they say something that now, since I know what happened now in hindsight, they gave me a hint there. I should have dug deeper when they said that. What could I have asked about that would have uncovered what we know now? All right, so now the person is telling me that they're not going to move because this job thing has been delayed. So I guess looking back, I could have asked them how confident they are that this job transition is going to happen within the time frame that they expect, right? I could have asked that maybe, and that would have cleared that up. So next time I have somebody that I'm working with who's moving because of a job or a relocation, I can ask them, how confident are you that this timeline is going to stay intact? And did I ask if there was anything else that would keep them from moving forward? It's a great question to add on. So when you meet with me, outside of you agreeing with the price that we talk about and everything else, outside of that, is there anything that would keep you from listening in your home with us? Right? So it's not, I've got to talk to somebody. It's not, well, I got to see what's going to happen with the job. It's not this and that. Outside of price and you liking me and our team, is there anything that would keep you from listening in your home with us? Just so I know, right? How to build trust and rapport. Number one, be approachable. Ask good questions. Asking good questions allows the prospect to talk about themselves. That builds rapport naturally on its own. Get on common ground, right? So if there are some similarities between you and the person you're talking to, bring those out into the light. If you guys grew up in the same area, talk about it. If you share the same hobbies, talk about it. If you both have pets, talk about it. Find common ground. Use their first name, right? My goal is usually to try to use somebody's first name 3 times and like really early. Like in the first 5 minutes or something, to use their name 3 times. So that way for me, I anchor it and they notice it. Like I notice it when people that meet me anew and then use my first name, like relatively new in the time frame in which we met, right? It makes an impact. I'm like, damn, they remembered my name. Because how many people do these days, right? A lot of people just don't remember. Some of you probably don't remember my name right now. I bet you. Huh? Jeff. Oh, I don't have a name tag on. Yeah. It's like I got somebody else's name tag on. So use their name, right? Learn communication modalities. What that means is people will generally talk in the terms of how they receive information. So if somebody says, well, I need to hear more about it, right? Then they're telling you they're kind of an audible learner, right? Or they receive information most effectively through auditory delivery, right? So if somebody says, I need to hear what you're saying, great. So what does it sound like now that you've heard it? How does that sound, right? That would be consistent with somebody who needs to hear what we're talking about. If they need to see it, well, I need to see what your strategy would be, right? Then once you see it, would you move forward as long as it made sense? Those kind of things. So if you listen to how a person speaks, right? Do they want to hear things? Do they need to see things? Do they need to touch it, feel it? Right? That tells you a lot about how the person makes their decisions and how they receive information. So if I know that this person is a hear sounds kind of person, when I'm doing my presentation, do you hear what I'm saying? How does that sound? Right? Stay upbeat, right? That will kind of like it'll keep them upbeat. And then pick up on their favorite words and phrases. And literally you just insert those words and phrases into your language patterns and you start building a common bond right there. Right? I mean, sometimes when I do something bad, I'll say, that's my bad. Right? And so when somebody else says, oh, that's my bad, I'm like, oh, we have a connection there. We use the same thing. People skills. The keys to selling today is honesty and integrity are probably at the top of the list because there's been enough fraudulent people out there in the sales business. Everybody is scared to death that they're going to get ripped off some way or another. So everybody is looking for somebody who's honest and has a high level of integrity. So you need to make sure that you're articulating that.
Where are you at?
Huh?
Where are you at?
Oh, really?
I lost.
Oh. Well, Daniel, do you know if it's supposed to be off in the book? Did I miss a break?
Yeah, you missed, there's 2 breaks.
Yeah. It's all in one section. So where did you guys last have me?
We've got that, but it's how to build trust and rapport is the first one. And you're going back, that one.
Uh-huh.
The next one is not in here.
Okay. So we don't have this in the book? What's on the next page? Do we have this?
It goes to 5 ways.
5 whys. Okay. So thank you for pointing that out. Daniel, we just make a note of that so we can make whatever edit is necessary there. So 5 whys. People are more likely to like people who are like themselves. Right? There's a lot of likes going on there. We have that in there? Okay. Thanks for bringing that up. So people, and we're just about done with this. So people are more likely to work with people, right, that they like. They're going to like people that are like themselves. People do business with people that they like, know, and trust, right? So that's kind of an old rule that still holds true. This book, by the way, Influence, the Power of, or the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini is a great book. They've done several releases of this and have updated it quite a bit. I think it was originally written in the 70s. He's a professor of psychology, I think at University of Arizona or Arizona State in Arizona. Still teaches there. But this book really outlines the 6 rules of influence. And there's 2 of these rules that really play an important role. One of them can be used so effectively today that we couldn't in the past. And we'll talk about which one that is. But the rule of reciprocity, number 1, to keep it really simple, what the rule of reciprocity works on is that if I do something for you, you inherently have a need to do something back, right? So if I come out there and give you a free home evaluation, for instance, the whole home value thing is really built around the rule of reciprocity. That if we come out there and help you by providing a home assessment, that in turn you'll give us a fair shot to earn your business. If I come out there to work with a for sale by owner to help make sure that he's protecting or she's protecting or they're protecting themselves from any potential liabilities they might have trying to sell on their own, I'm trying to work with the rule of reciprocity. By providing them that information, if they do decide to use an agent, they'll be more likely to use me, right? So that's the rule of reciprocity. Find out any way that you can use it. If you've got information that helps homeowners, you use that in a rule of reciprocity way. I have some information I think that would help. It's free, it's no cost, it's helped a lot of other people. Let me get it out to you. By the way, when the time comes and you're ready to meet with agents, would you allow me to meet with you? All right? I go for the close after I've given them something. Does that make sense? Right? Like the waitress at the restaurant doesn't ask for the tip before she serves you the food. Right? I gave you the food and you had a good meal, so in return, give me something. I'm going to give you something, so in turn, I want a shot to earn your business. So that's a rule of reciprocity. And you can look at your everyday life, right? That is used a lot. We don't even realize it. We don't even realize it. Like if I've helped somebody move, that's the one I always use a comparison, right? If I've helped somebody move, then I expect that they're probably going to help me when my time comes, right? Or if somebody helps me move, and then they go, hey, Jeff, I need some help moving. Like I feel like I've got to help them just because they helped me move.
Or pay somebody to help.
Right. So depending on the time value of money, I might just do that. Or maybe I have somebody else that owes me a favor. This rule of reciprocity just goes on down the line. Right? Hey, you owe me a favor. Will you go help so-and-so move? So commitment and consistency is the other second principle of influence. People generally want to remain consistent with what they've made commitments to. So if they said, yes, I'm going to sell my home in the next 60 or 90 days, we remind them of them stating that they wanted to make a move in the next 60 and 90 days. People don't want to all of a sudden stray away from what they had committed to already, right? So people generally, in most cases, want to remain consistent to what they've committed to before. So that's how we can apply that rule. Also, they want the same from us. So if I committed to call you or to follow up at a certain time, right, they want me to remain consistent with that commitment. And if I miss one follow-up or I begin to become inconsistent, the sale's gotten that much farther out, or the opportunity for me. So I want to make sure that I'm using their commitments and keeping them consistent and then make sure that we're doing the same. Social proof is the big one that 30 years ago would have been, much harder to use, right? 40, 50 years ago, social proof would have been other people, for instance, that you've done business with that can praise how great you are, right? Before, you'd have had to have like a letter or something that maybe Miss Homeowner wrote about how great you are. Maybe you had some other avenue to get it out there, but we sure didn't have the avenues we have today, right? We can get testimonials on Facebook. We can share those to custom audiences in specific areas. I can take the expired listing that we just knocked it out of the park on, put that in a Facebook format, target audience, the neighborhood around that same home, right? And I can really build a lot of social proof these days using social media, sourcing my past clients for testimonials, and then creating a process to share the heck out of them, right? And get as many testimonials as possible. Every single client that you get, as soon as a property closes, within 30 days, they should have a testimonial call. And that's a scripted call with the purpose of getting a testimonial and then a possible referral on the end of it. But really stacking up as many testimonials as you can. Then you've got a whole bunch of social proof with other people saying it worked for me, and people are more likely to choose you based on what other people have experienced if they don't know a lot about you, right? If you're not on the TV or radio all the time and they don't have any knowledge base to form an opinion of you from, how are they going to do it? They're going to maybe believe you telling them, but they'll believe their neighbor much more. So social proof is one of the key rules of influence that everybody is trying to use at a 10x level these days. Liking, right? Find ways to get people to like you, and you'll have a better chance of them doing business with you. So being professional, showing up punctual, on time, looking professional, dressed right, nice shoes, whatever it is, the things that you know, it's not rocket science. If people like you, you'll have a better chance of getting them to do business with you. Authority, right? If you come across as a person of authority, and if you're really knowledgeable about the market, the industry, right? How your system helps homeowners, if you're really knowledgeable about articulating the difference between you and the average agent selling 5 to 6 homes a year, right? Then people will look at you as a person of authority. People think Mike back there is a person of authority simply because he's on TV and the radio all the time. Right? They did a study in people who just, like the people that wear a security guard uniform, right? We respect whatever they tell us to do simply because they're wearing that uniform, and we were taught that the uniform, right, means a person of authority. So people will oftentimes respond to even just titles, right? That's why like a lot of people have vice president on their business card in organizations when there's 50 vice presidents. Everybody has a vice president title. Right? Just because it creates this authority persona, and people are more apt to work with, I mean, who would you do business with, the vice president or the junior broker? Right? And they could be one and the same. All the guy did was change his name on his business card, and now all of a sudden I think I'm dealing with much better than the other guy. So if we can appear to be a person of authority, in our case, right, that's going to be a lot of our product knowledge, our market knowledge, how will we articulate that, and like using it to where a 5th grader can understand it, because there's other agents out there that they know it just as well, but they speak about it in a way that's very hard to understand, and it's complicated and confusing to somebody who doesn't live in that world all the time, right? And then scarcity is the last rule of influence. Stuff that is rare and difficult to get or in limited amounts, people want more. Right? So you can use your time as being extremely valuable. That's a great way to qualify appointments. Listen, my time is extremely valuable. I get really busy this time of year, and I'm sure you're busy too, so I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I want to make sure we're on the same page. Right? That kind of thing, my time is valuable. That will make people want to work with you more than it would scare people away. A lot of people are like, man, that sounds like I'm going to scare people away with that. You won't. Right? And if you're confident and convicted in it and you believe your time is valuable, then it will attract far more people than it would ever push away. Same thing if there's a limited amount of homes on the market, right? Bless you. Areas where there's not much inventory, right? That's scarcity, right? That's what's working. So those are the 6 principles of influence that we want to focus on. Rule of reciprocity. I do something for you. You're going to do something for me. You want to remain consistent with the commitments that you made. I'm going to remain consistent with the commitments I make. If I can get testimonials and show you that other people like it, you're more apt to do it. If you like me, you're more apt to do business with me. If you think that I'm a person of authority or that I'm sharp as a tack, I know my stuff, you're more likely to do business with me. And if I can create a sense of scarcity, whether it's about my time, it's about the inventory on the market, it's about the window of time we have before we need to get you out there on the market, whatever it is, if I can create some scarcity around it, that helps too. All right, and on that note, that's the end of that section, and we'll take a 15-minute break.